Miami kicked off a 4-game road trip after 7 straight losses on the road, and it was a tale of two halves until Bam Adebayo and his 32 points helped guide the team to a much-needed win. Great performances from several players and one of their best defensive efforts of the season. We break down what went right, who gets credit, a conversation about Tyler Herro, and much more on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. The Heat beat the Hawks 106-98 on Sunday night, outscoring Atlanta 55-38 in the second half to win their third straight game, tying their longest win streak of the season and improving to 10-11 overall. But the story of the game is Bam Adebayo, who had 32 points a couple of nights after going off for 38 points in a win in Washington. Again, against Washington, his stats for the last two games here, okay? 38 points and 12 rebounds on 68% shooting against the Wizards on Friday. Then tonight, 32 points and 8 rebounds on 65% shooting. David, it feels like we've asked this question before, but is this the version of Bam that Heat fans have been waiting for?
Oh, without a doubt. This is absolutely the best version of Bam that we've ever seen. I have not seen this comfort level from him at any point throughout his NBA career, where he just seems like every shot is going to go in. And he's willing to take shots that he has not shown prior to this kind of run that he's had over the last 5-10 games in his offensive repertoire. Just showing much more in his bag, gets into the paint. He's got that nice little floater, putting up things. Like at one point, he threw up a circus shot a la Dwayne Wade. It went in. It didn't count because he had gone to foul before the basket, but he just kind of laughed to himself like, here I am. It feels like an embodiment of the Michael Jordan shrug, where it's just like, what can I do? Everything's going to go in. And I know detractors from all over the country will say, you know, this is what we're expecting from him. His numbers are still mid, things of this sort. That's ridiculous. He has been sensational over a long stretch now. I think it's consistent enough. We've asked for him to be aggressive. Not only is he being aggressive, he's being dominant. He's putting up huge numbers and doing it with some incredible otherworldly level defense as well. One of the top defenders in the NBA, if not the best defender in the league. He is an all-star, putting up fantastic numbers.
Worth mentioning, no Clint Capella tonight for the Atlanta Hawks, but it's not like their backup center is some sort of scrub. Onyeka Okongwu has been he's probably the best backup center in the NBA. He's been really good for Atlanta. He plays basically starters minutes for them. Even when Capella's there, because he's just playing so many minutes. But he's a really good center. And Bam Adebayo took it to him and outplayed him on both ends. Not just offensively, but also defensively. That, like you said, something that we're accustomed to seeing. But look, you mentioned how he started just laughing at himself against the Wizards on Friday night, too. He kind of looked at his hand after making a floater and did that whole celebration, too, which I think Dwayne Wade invented, not positive. But it was definitely a Dwayne Wade constant, looking at his hand and just being like, what is this? And Bam Adebayo pulled that out of his bag as well. The key point that you hit, though, is where his shots are coming from. Everybody on planet Earth wanted Bam Adebayo to start shooting threes and thought that was going to be the next level to unlock his game. Yours truly included, by the way. But I always thought that the first step to becoming a good three-point shooter, or even a steady one, having that actually be a weapon of his, was expanding out to like 18 feet, that mid-range 2-point area. And I thought we would see that from Bam this season before we actually saw him become a three-point shooter. That's what I anticipated, at least. That has not been the case. He's actually done the opposite. He said, you know what? I don't really want to take these 16 to 18 footers anymore. I'm really not going to bother with any three-point shooting, even though I flashed it in the scrimmages and any of that kind of stuff. He'll take a three here and there, but it's the same stuff as it's been his entire career. Desperation heaves at end of shot clocks. Those don't count. He hasn't taken an in-rhythm three-pointer within early in the shot clock all season long, and he didn't take it all last season either. He said, you know what? I'm not even going to do the 10-foot stuff hardly ever. I want to get as close to the basket as possible. He's getting so decisive on the roll specifically in those pick and rolls where he's just one dribble up at the basket or no dribbles if he's close enough at the initial point of penetration and all these things. He's just so decisive and strong with his moves that he's just getting a couple of feet closer than I think he was last year. But that couple of feet is so meaningful, and the decisiveness with which he goes to those shots is very, very meaningful, very impactful, and I think that's why we're seeing his percentage go up and why he's become such an efficient scorer for the Heat. Is he going to score 32 points a night? Absolutely not. But this is a guy who's going to average more than 20 points per game this season, I think it's safe to say, while playing Defensive Player of the Year caliber defense. There's not a whole lot of guys in the NBA that could do that, David.
One, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
That's
and
it.
this is a guy who's regularly in MVP considerations. Now, we're not there at Bam Adebayo because we don't see those kind of 40 to 50-point outbursts that Giannis is capable of from time to time. But in terms of consistency and everything else, and one of the things that we both overlooked in talking about him, the touch around the basket too, has been sensational. I mean, again, the offensive repertoire has been expanded without a doubt, but the way he's putting up these shots comfortably, confidently, and with soft touch, like there were shots there where he was taking these kind of semi-pseudo hooks in route and fluidly, and then they just drop because he's just putting such soft touch on it.
I won't go so as far as to say
they drop through.
He's not like bringing back the post game. That feels too far to say, but
right.
You mentioned expanding his offensive repertoire, and I think in today's NBA, we just think about that as like, can you shoot threes or not? Right. And that's sort of the repertoire. But with Bam, you're right. He's expanding that offensive toolbox within 10 feet of the basket. It's not just dunks at the rim, which is basically his entire shot diet in the paint over the first several years of his career. Now he's got that hook shot. He can hit a reverse layup. He's got the push shot that we saw really develop over the last couple of years. He's got all of it, and he's doing it with efficiency. He's doing it with more touch, which leads me to believe that he's been practicing it a lot more, which leads me to believe that he's emphasizing that he's basically saying, I don't need to be a three-point shooter. I don't need to be Miles Turner. I don't need to be this guy. I am best when I'm at the basket, and that's what he's focusing on, and I love it. Miami outscoring Atlanta tonight, 58-34 in the paint. How many of those were Bam Adebayo paint points? Like 32 of them? It feels like it, right?
It feels like that. It does feel like it. I mean, Caleb Martin driving to the rim. There were others, obviously, but Bam, without it, I mean,
it's like all of his points were in the paint.
Yeah, I think we haven't had the association of Bam and dominant in terms of his offense, except for the handful of games throughout his early part of his career. But just this consistent stretch over the last few weeks has been really, really, really solid. To your point, I'll present the flip side of this too. Okay. His ability to get to the rim as often as he does and be as efficient as you mentioned sets up everything else, the expansion of his range. Now you kind of have to take a step back, almost playing drop a little bit because you don't know what he's going to do. You don't want him to just attack you with his speed and quickness and strength. So you kind of play off him a little bit. That sets up the opportunity to take those mid-range shots down the road.
Or play make. You're giving him open windows to pass. Yes. I mean, this is why you can't – I mean, teams do play off of Draymond Green to a certain extent. But even when Draymond's in that like 18 to 20-foot range, you can't just play off of him because you're asking one of the best passing big men in the league to just pass with no interference. And that's sort of the issue with Bam too. You can't really do that. And not to mention all the other athletic stuff that he brings to the table. You did say, though, we've seen stretches like this over the course of his career. And this is a 2-game stretch that we're talking about in terms of 32 points, 38 points. His scoring overall has been better. I do think that what we've seen so far this year is just a more enhanced version of Bam Adebayo. Offensively, he's better than he ever has been. But what do you think this is? It's sort of a general question, but is this a good stretch for Bam Adebayo? Is this an evolution of Bam Adebayo? Is this can we expect 20 points a game, or are we looking at 25 points per game, which is a big difference? Like, what do you think this is?
I think it's more along the lines of 20 plus, not quite 25 points per game, because there were even games during this long stretch where, he averaged like 15, 17, or he had a couple of not stinkers, but just not putting up these big numbers. And that's where, again, the loud detractors can come into play here and start saying, well, you can't do it consistently. Well, I don't think any player in the NBA does it consistently if they're just running the offense through him all the time. And that's just not who Bam is, because while they do run the offense through him, a lot of that is because of his ability to play make for others. I will also say that not only is it a combination of the expanded repertoire, the focus, as you mentioned, on his ability to get to the rim and just continue to work on that touch around the basket, but there are playmakers on this team that have made it a concerted effort to get him these kind of open looks.
Yeah.
And they just made everything so much easier for him. We cannot overlook, when we're talking about Bam, it's not just about Bam. He gets all the flowers, all the deserving credit. And at the same time, you have to look to playmakers. In today's case, Tyler Herro and Kyle Lowry in particular, who I thought were really, really good in unlocking another version of Bam, drawing defenses with their ball handling and shot creation, and then being able to dump it off to a waiting Bam who was able to finish at the rim. So it's a combination of things, and that's the way it should be. This is team basketball after all.
You could tell with Jimmy Butler also not playing tonight again for a sixth straight game, and Kyle Lowry and Tyler Herro struggling a little bit from the field, that they just basically looked at Bam and said, hey, man, you got to bring it home for us. Caleb Martin, also so huge for the Miami Heat tonight. We're going to talk about Caleb and a lot about the other guys who stepped up tonight next in Credit Cookies. But David, first, tell listeners about Turo.
Well, this episode is brought to you by Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it. From a community of local hosts, you can browse a huge selection of vehicles from just about any occasion or budget across the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia. You can book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family road trip, or you can get a classic or luxury car for a special event, a birthday, or a holiday. You can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from point A to point B. You can test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions do apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive today at Turo.com. That's Tur.com.
Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Well, David, it's a Heat win, which means it's time to get in the kitchen and whip up some Credit Cookies. David, what are we whipping up today?
Yeah, I'm totally uninspired today in the cookie choice, but we had Chinese earlier, and we're going with a fortune cookie, But it kind of fits, too.
That's inspired.
We weren't quite sure what to make with this, but there's always a little nugget inside, something to take away from this game, something positive. Nobody really cares about the cookie itself. It's all about the fortune. That was tonight's second half, and the great performances from several players that we'll talk about now.
Fortune cookie, the worst tasting cookie that people get the most excited for because you get the little prize inside. Is it allowed to open, if you don't like your first fortune, are you allowed to open up a second Chinese cookie?
Yes.
Another fortune
Considering
cookie?
they're made in a factory in Jersey, I don't really ascribe too much mysticism to it.
They take all the fun out of it.
Yeah, I will say this, however, if you're ever in New York, and this is the only place I know about it, I'm sure it's elsewhere, but Chinatown in New York, you see a little stand around there. They're selling hot cakes. It's just fortune cookies. It's not hardened. It's their fresh, hot fortune cookie.
Are they better?
And it's delicious.
Oh,
absolutely. It's the sweet kind of vanilla-y flavor of a fortune cookie and hot, especially on a winter day. Sensational.
I wonder if that's how they're supposed to come, but by the time they get to your doorstep,
yeah,
it's just like
exactly. By the time they're delivered,
the Chinese restaurants can't figure out. They're like, why isn't this soft when it gets there? I disagree with you, though. I think that's a crime. I think if you don't like your first fortune, tough luck. Wait till the next time. Wait until next Friday. Like that's the rules. Bam Adebayo, fortune cookies. We only have 10 to give out. It feels like you could get 10, but we have so many more. 6?
5.
Is that too many? 5?
Yeah, 5 feels fair just because, again, we have so many to distribute to everybody else.
5 for Bam.
But again, defensively, offensively, there's only so much we could talk about. We could expand on him, and I'm sure we will over the next couple coming days, but fantastic night from him. The aggression, the comfort level, it's all tying together in a beautiful, beautiful way.
I'm giving Caleb 3 then. 3
yes.
fortune cookies. Okay. 8 of 12 tonight, 2 of 3 from 3-point range, 20 points overall, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. He had just 1 turnover, which is a nice number for him too. In 41 minutes for Caleb Martin. They needed those minutes, specifically because Jamal Cain came in as his backup, played about a minute and a half, and the Hawks just went on a run, and it was clear. Not all Jamal Cain's fault, but he was not helpful tonight. So they basically said, you know what, Caleb, it's all you. Haywood Highsmith played 23 minutes, but then turned his ankle, what was that, the third quarter, did not come back into the game. So they relied on Caleb Martin down the stretch, and boy, did he step up. It's not just the numbers there, but the way that he was scoring. It was so many of his points were almost like swing points, right? Where the Hawks would be going in for a rebound, and Caleb Martin would either block Onyeka Okongwu from behind or or
That
get
was
or
fantastic.
finish off
What a
a
play.
steal deflection and grab the ball. And so like so many of his like 2-pointers in transition kind of felt like 4-point swings tonight. It was so impactful what he was able to do.
Yeah, great night from him, and the level of, I wish I could phrase it, some of the, just the acrobatic nature of what he was doing around the rim. Like there was the one play where it felt like he was falling out of bounds, kind of went in an up and under move on a defender. I can't remember who he was, and as he was kind of drifting to his left, falling, just puts up this circus shot that nobody expected to fall through, just drips in. Great touch from him again. He's using the board in incredible ways to get these layups, and he has the level of athleticism, the speed, the quickness to be able to get to the rim. But once he gets there, now he's putting really, really nice touch and using the backboard on all his layups. It's really an impressive development from him. But the defense is there, the playmaking, as you talked about, and yes, I think why he gets the credit cookies he does is because they came at key moments throughout the game. Like he was probably Miami's. Well, I mean, Max had a good first half, but Caleb was, I think, the most consistent player whenever he was out there. Those minutes were just really,
Yeah, it was
really
Caleb
positive
and
from
Bam.
him.
Yeah, exactly. 12 points in the fourth quarter for Caleb Martin. It's his third game in a row with 20 or more points, the best stretch of his career from a scoring perspective.
Yep.
His improvement overall across the board is so much. He is a better playmaker. He is a better shooter. I asked Eric Spoelstra about it the last time that they were the second
Washington first.
yeah,
one,
the first Washington game. I asked him about Caleb Martin, and he goes, he is a great shooter, and I don't throw that word around great lightly. And you can kind of see that, like every time he shoots, I kind of expect it to go in. Now he's not just making catch and shoot attempts, which he is a lot. Like a lot of his shots are coming in the flow of the offense, which is good in rhythm. But sometimes he's just sort of stuck in. There was a moment tonight, and I've noticed this a couple times over the course of the season, where he just sort of gets stuck in the corner with the ball, and nobody kind of comes and helps him. Nobody sets a down screen, nothing against the baseline to kind of free him up, nothing. They'll just sort of clear out and let him kind of go, and he'll shoot it, and it's gone in a few times. And that's not a good shot for anybody, let alone Caleb Martin. So he's gotten so much better across the board. I said this
as a ball handler too.
Across the board. Defensively, he's better. He's better at everything. I do wonder. I'm curious your opinion on this, because after Wednesday night's win against the Wizards, I said that it feels like he's finally found his voice as a starter, which meant, and what I meant by that is it felt like early in the year he was trying to be sort of your prototype Miami Heat power forward, just shooting from the corner, sort of parking himself there, defensively trying to do some of the stuff that PJ Tucker was doing, kind of trying to kind of silence the doubters saying you're not big enough to play power forward, and so he would try to play big, but he's not big enough to play power forward. And I think he finally figured out that he shouldn't be. And he kind of got back into fronting and deflections and jumping passing lanes and just being a more dynamic presence on both ends of the court than PJ Tucker really was, just doing more stuff. That doesn't mean he's better than PJ Tucker. Doesn't mean he's worse. It just means he's different. And that's the point, is that Caleb Martin is so different than PJ Tucker or even Jay Crowder before him. And I think he's finding his voice of how to make an impact as a starter.
His post-game comments to Eric Reed, like he was asked about that, he kind of said he was taking a little bit from Udonis Haslem as an undersized player. PJ Tucker, he referenced him last year too. And then yet there's a different element to his game, right, that none of those players had. That kind of speed, the quickness, the athleticism, the ability just off the hop to be able to get to the rim and sky the way he does. He just can finish at the rim in a way neither of those players could. So it's just, he's taking something and adding his own dynamic nature to it to make it, I think, maybe even a better version of those players to some degree. Like I have to see it much more consistently, and maybe this is a little bit of recency bias, but you saw the big stop against Bradley Beal in the fourth quarter and that win on Friday, essential for them to be able to get that win too. They had a big game on Wednesday against the Wizards, and then tonight coming through.
And he guarded Trae Young tonight. Caleb Martin did in that starting lineup. He was the guy on Trae Young.
Him too.
Kyle Lowry, Tyler Herro. I know we want to talk about Tyler Herro in depth in the next segment. But in terms of Kyle Lowry, just chalk this up as another game where the box score doesn't jump out, but the plus minus. He was the best on the team. Plus 13. Better than Bam. Better than Caleb. That was Kyle Lowry tonight. It just felt like he was so in charge of the game when he was on the court, despite him going 2 for 9 overall. He did have 9 assists, had 3 rebounds, only had a couple of turnovers. Just played a good floor game, per usual. But on a night without Gabe Vincent, again, no Jimmy Butler, a really short bench. I mean, we're talking about Drew Smith, Haywood Highsmith, and Jamal Cain kind of coming off the bench, as well as Dwayne Dedmon. So not a whole lot of ball handling coming off the bench for Miami, and so they needed a lot from Kyle Lowry. Yeah. And you can feel the difference when he was on the court. Just the Hawks are a tough team to play. They have so much ball handling. Trae Young is such a genius on offense. Like, you just need a guy who knows what's going on, a veteran like Kyle Lowry, to point guys in the right direction. You could feel his impact tonight. So he deserves a fortune cookie, in my opinion.
Yeah, a cookie apiece for him and Tyler. I think that's fair.
Yeah, Tyler,
Their
11 points, 3 for 13 overall for Tyler, 11 rebounds, 10 assists, his first triple-double of his career. So that's worth a cookie.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, everybody kind of fixates on this kind of sort of random, double-digit accumulation of points, rebounds, and everything else like that. It's a nice thing to have to say, I got my first triple-double. He's flirted with them in the past, but their games kind of similar to each other. They almost mirrored one another. Both of them struggling from the field, and yet they were able to impact the games in other ways. We've always known that Tyler is a very solid rebounder, despite whatever physical limitations he has. He has an incredible knack for the ball, and he saw it tonight. But the fact that both of them have taken their playmaking to another level, and again, as I said in the first half, I think it really helped unlock this version of Bam Adebayo, and you can get those shots to Caleb when he's not creating off the bounce or something like that. So I just really, really good game management from both of those players, and solid defense from Kyle as well. I think just a block and 2 steals from him, really, really impactful in his 33 minutes.
We are going to talk about Tyler Herro in depth in the next segment and whether or not he came back too soon based on some of these scoring numbers. It's worth having that conversation. But first, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Daily fantasy made easy. All you have to do to play in PrizePicks is pick 2 to 5 players, and if they're going to score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any single entry. And the best part, you're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch, including the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, PGA, college football, the World Cup right now, and so many more sports. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy, safe and fast withdrawals, and it's currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to theprizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive up to 100% an instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Again, if you deposit $100, PrizePicks is going to give you $100 to play with. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50, and it goes on from there. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for that instant deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks. Daily fantasy made easy. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Let's get to some questions from our listeners who tweeted us at Locked On Heat with the hashtag AskLOHeat. You can also email us lockedonheat@gmail.com. This one comes from Miguel. Did Tyler Herro come back too soon? It's a good question, David, considering that he did only shoot 3 of 13 overall, did seem to struggle with his shot early and throughout the game. Doesn't seem, since he came back from this ankle injury, to have that same level of burst. He really just has. It's not just tonight. It's been since he's come back. Hasn't really found that scoring touch yet. I credit him for being a playmaker and getting the triple-double, and we did give him a credit cookie. It was not a bad game for him, but it's not the Tyler Herro we're accustomed to seeing either.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. It's hard to say, obviously with all the other injuries across the board and perhaps some internal pressure from Erik Spoelstra, there's a need for him out there. And, what were his comments? I can't recall exactly against which team or in what post-game press conference he mentioned it, but if you're capable of playing 8 minutes or if you're capable of playing 20, get out there because we need you at this point. So obviously there's a need and there's been a little pressure from the coaching staff to get him out there. I don't know. I can't say for certain whether he went too soon. He does look a little out of sorts offensively in particular, but my concern is also with him defensively. Like I know that there's always going to be a problem with him on that end. At least for now, it seems like it's going to be just a consistent one even this season, even though he had some moments earlier on. But I think it cost Miami a little bit in that first half, which is why they were down 9 at the half. And then in the second half, I think he kind of made this realization, hey, you know what? The shot isn't falling. I've got to impact the game in other ways, this is what the conversation about Tyler is all about. This is what the conversation about any elite level scorer in the NBA is about, is what can you do when those shots aren't falling? How can you find a way to impact the game positively? We saw an uptick in his playmaking. I think we even saw a slight improvement in his overall defensive effort and rebounding. I don't think he was anywhere close to flirting with a triple-double in that first half, especially when he wasn't shooting so well. But then because of his numbers in the second half, certainly got closer to that mark. And that's what it's all about for Tyler. So maybe he's struggling because of injury. I think that's just a reality for the rest of the season. And I don't know that Miami can afford to have him shut down for a prolonged period of time. They need him out there. He is impactful. The threat of the shot, even like tonight, when it's not falling, is still a realistic need for this team. And it makes a difference for them positively. But his ability to recognize mid-game, hey, you know what? I can't hit the shot. The three's not falling. I can't create off the dribble because I'm just not quick enough right now. I can still do other things to help this team win.
That they were spamming that same action over and over and over again, especially in that third quarter. It was Tyler Herro curling around a Bam Adebayo screen, Bam rolling to the rim, Tyler Herro throwing that lob to Bam. And they found something there. To your point, the spacing that Tyler Herro demands is part of that, right? You can't just drop back completely and wall off the paint to Bam Adebayo. So you have to come out a little bit, even when you know what the play is going to be. They run this not just in that third quarter a bajillion times, the entire season. Like Tyler Herro is the preeminent lob thrower to Bam on this team. Nobody else does it with as much frequency, or arguably maybe Kyle Lowry's the only one who could do it better. But they do it all the time. And yet, because you have to respect Tyler Herro as a shooter, despite him only going 3 for 13 tonight, and only missing all 8 of his 3-point attempts, he still demands that respect, and you have to do it. And so he was able to get to that lob over and over and over to Bam. Tyler Herro has become such a well-rounded player, and I think that's the thing that gets lost, and not to sort of just call out people like casual fans or something like that, but you look at somebody as a sixth man of the year who's scoring 20-plus points per game with Tyler Herro's frame and just sort of the wiggle that he has with the way he plays. I think it's just easy to assume that he's sort of a one-dimensional scorer. Defensively, he's gotten better this year. He still has a ways to go, but he's gotten better year over year, I would say, defensively. And as a playmaker, he's gotten so much better. I'll never get over what John Calipari told me, that he would literally tell Tyler Herro, do not pass the ball. When Calipari was coaching Tyler Herro at Kentucky, don't pass the ball. We are worse on offense when you pass the ball. That is a bananas thing to say, to think that an offense could somehow be worse by sharing and passing the ball. And yet he was so bad as a passer, John Calipari would tell him not to pass it. And where he has come from then to now, he's not just an okay passer. He's a good playmaker. He's got good recognition. He throws that lob with good accuracy. And to your point, like to recognize midstream that, hey, my shot's just not falling, but I could get to these other things. And then also got to the line, 5 of 5 from the free throw line. So got those 11 points that he needed to accomplish that triple-double. Like, I thought that was a really impressive game by Tyler Herro. It was not his best game by any stretch of his career. It was a poor shooting game, and he needs to get better. I thought Crotty, during the broadcast, actually pointed out, he said, look, no matter whether it came back too soon or not, you're coming off of an ankle injury. It's just going to take you a while. Not just because of the injury itself, but because of the conditioning, considering how long he was out. And that's a good point. So I do think it'll take a few games. Tyler Herro will get back to the conditioning and get whatever burst that he is missing right now. I think he'll get it back. It just takes some time. But the fact that he was able to recognize what the game needed from him and not force it, that was winning basketball. And that's what Eric Spoelstra likes to see.
3 free throw attempts for him in the third quarter, 6 rebounds in the second half, 6 assists in the second half. So, I mean, again, the larger bulk of his overall numbers coming in there once he makes that realization. Now, the problem, I mean, a concern perhaps, maybe if not a problem itself, is that once he does get that burst back, does he recognize that he can do all these other things, that he should continue to incorporate these on a night-to-night basis rather than just say, you know what, I'm a bucket getter. This is what I do. This is what I've always done. This is what my college coach told me to do. This is what I did for the first 2 years in my NBA career, and now I'm being asked to do something else. That's not who I am. This is why you signed me to this long-term extension. I don't know. Again, as we talked about with Bam, it's been an ongoing process. Like we're starting to see the manifestation of years and years of collective wishful thinking from this Heat fan base saying, we want you to be more aggressive. We want you to do this. Well, now you're seeing it play out in Tyler to some extent. We've seen flashes. Will it take another year or two for it to be consistent where he can go and just be an all-star level scorer all the time and now also start to incorporate some of that playmaking? Perhaps. I don't know. I'd love to see a balance throughout the season, but the only time will tell.
He's 22 years old. Bam is 25. This stuff does take time. This is the first time Tyler Herro has been a starter in this kind of role. And I think it's just going to take some feeling out. But I'm with you. I think it's maybe not a concern is a strong word, but it's a question that is still lingering and probably will linger for a couple of years. He's that young. I think it takes a while for these guys to kind of figure that kind of stuff out. But overall, he's been a positive, I think, for the Heat. All right. That'll do it for us today. Thank you again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Make sure to ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining me, David.
Shout out Dwayne Dedman too, who had a fantastic game. We
It's
did
true.
mention him.
16 points for him too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of them deserve it.